Welcome back, viewers, to my story. This is episode 14. Hi, I'm a battered wife, and this is my story. Today, I will tell you some more about growing up at Dapchari. So, we made some friends with the neighboring kids over there, and I remember some of their names. There was this girl in the farm across the road, on the farm across the road. Her name was Ratan. Her brother was Balya. So Ratan was about my older sister's Ruby's age, and Balya was closer to my age, a little older than me. Then in front of Ratan and Balya's farm was the farm of a guy whose name was Khavesra. So I remember Khavesra's name very clearly, the surname. And he had three boys. Of the three boys, I only remember Ajay. So there's a funny incident about this poor guy called Khavesra. What happened was he looked very similar to a Marathi villain, a Marathi movie villain called Nilu Phule. Anyone who was growing up in the 70s and 80s, I guess, or anyone who was even an adult in the 70s and 80s would have heard of this guy called Nilu Phule. So this Kavisra looked so similar to Nilu Phule, and I have mentioned the Adivasis before. The Adivasis or the local tribals, they were so innocent and sweet. They they could not differentiate between a movie actor, a character, and an actual person. So what happened was, once in a while there used to be these open air movies aired in this place. So all of us in the evening, we would go, the entire family, we would all go sit, watch the entire movie in the open air theatre, and then go home after that. So I have this memory of once where I was quite small and we were walking back home after one of the movies, and dad was holding me, and I remember very clearly that mom had stitched a frock from some material called china silk or some such synthetic material. And as dad was holding me, because of how slippery and silken the dress was, I would keep slipping from his grip. And I remember being acutely conscious of that constant slipping. Then dad would kind of hoist me up in his arms again, and then again I would slowly start slipping. So that is a distinct memory. So what happened was, these would be Marathi movies that would be aired. Obviously, the people who lived there were all Maharashtrians, right? Rural Maharashtrians. And these Adivasis would also watch the movies. All of us would gather at one place to go watch these movies. So there was one standard villain in all of these movies who was Nilu Phule. So the poor Adivasis, when they saw Khavesra, one of the neighbors, which is Ajay's dad, across the road neighbor for Ratan and Balya, when they saw him one day, they surrounded him and they all beat him up because they actually thought he was Nilu Phule and he was the guy who had done all those evil things. So that is how innocent and sweet those Adivasi villagers were. Not all of them were sweet and innocent, but I'll come to that later. Okay, so these were some of the friends whose names I remember, and I have fond memories of playing with them. Like I had mentioned, we used to go to the stream and play with them. We used to cross the stream, go to the other side, explore. So those were some fun things. Another thing we would do, I'll tell you, was we would pick up dambar. So, what's it called in English? It's the sticky substance you lay to make the road. You put this bajri, the pebbles, the broken stone, and then you put this sticky liquid, black tar. So that was the dambar. So what we would do is we would pick up a little bit of the dambar, we would roll it into balls, and we used to play five stones with it. So I remember playing fun games with Balya, Ratan, Ajay. We used to also have some games where we would fold chits and kind of, juggle the chits, and each one would pick a chit. All kinds of fun games. So I had real fun times with them. And yeah, it was nice growing up at Dapchari. I remember one of my fondest memories where I felt most at peace. When I want to remember a peaceful time, like when Phoebe from Friends says, "Remember your happy place." So my happy place and my happy time is on that farm itself, beyond the cow sheds, and beyond the cow dung pit and that biogas setup. Beyond that, we had some banana plants, and they were planted in such a way that once I entered that, nobody could see me. So it would be as if I don't exist for the world and the world doesn't exist for me. It would be as if I've walked into another, what shall I say, another place, another dimension. Not even dimension. It would just be like when I would just walk into that grove where the bananas were growing. It was as if suddenly the world stopped existing and it was just me and these trees. And it was the most serene and peaceful feeling I had ever experienced. So I was a very small child and I would just kind of lean on those bananas. I would just stand there and I would just stay still over there. And I just loved it so much. I loved being among those banana trees hidden from the world. So that is one very fond memory I have of my childhood. Now, another thing about growing up in Dapchari was that my parents felt they had to send us to school, obviously. Now, the only school there was a government Marathi school, and that school did not have kindergarten, play school, nursery, none of those things. It started with first standard. So now my sister started going to that school, and I think I was about 2, if I'm not mistaken. I feel I was 2 years old. So they would send me also with my sister. So first of all, I was anemic. I had some memory attention problem. I don't know, some physical problems and all of that. But in spite of all that, that aside, I used to go with my sister. I used to go and sit in that first standard class. And there was that teacher, all the kids were older than me. And I could not understand one word of what she said or what was going on. She would be teaching something, and I think that could have been a starting point for my attention deficit, whatever problem I probably have. One is that because of the anemia, I had a memory problem. Second is I was put in a class that was not suitable for me. I could not understand anything that was going on. So I would start tuning out and I would stay tuned out. So then in the evening we would walk home joyfully with our slate and that the little wooden board or slate board, I don't know, one of those things with the little chalk thingy you write with and all. We used to walk home with that in our bags and enjoy like picking berries and picking up little stones to play 5 stones and just play in the stream and all of that, come home very happily. And every evening I remember when I would come home, my mom would ask me, "So, what did you learn today?" Now, I had to tell her something. So, I would tell her K, Kh, G, Gh, which is the basic, 5 letters of the alphabet in Marathi. So, then at one point, I remember she got really irritated and she said, "Every day you're only learning K, Kh, G, Gh." And I kind of remember I felt very intimidated and confused. And then I kind of was desperate to please her because, okay, I have this whole low self-esteem, people pleaser thing. There are so many reasons for it. One of them would be that because of my anemia, I had this memory problem. So I was always called weak, slow, and all of that. So I was desperate to please the adults in my life. I was like, how can I make them happy that I exist in their lives? So then I was desperate like to please her. I said, "Ch, ch, j, j." I said probably a few more letters. And then she just went, "That's all you learned. What else did you learn?" And then I didn't know what to say. So that is probably some of the roots of my low self-esteem. And I remember one more thing that happened at a later date, but kind of on the same lines. I remember that I just couldn't learn my tables no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried. I just couldn't learn my tables beyond 5 or 6. or maybe a little more, or the basics, the 10 time table, the 9 time table, the 8 also, 7 you struggle, 6 little bit I used to struggle. So I was probably quite small, but then I remember now that even sometimes when I had to learn a poem, because my teachers really later they liked sending me for poetry competitions and all for some reason, and I just couldn't. I would try and try and try. I would get the first stanza, second stanza, maybe a little, and then I would just not get it, no matter how hard I tried. I just couldn't. So all of these things contributed to my low self-esteem. So I remember in Dapchari once my dad was really, really trying to make me learn my tables up to 10, and I just wasn't getting it. Then he brought the tape recorder. He had bought a new cassette recorder. Those things were new at the time, where you could put in a cassette and record yourself. It used to be called a stereo system. And it was a new thing. And I don't know if he intended to humiliate me, but he like pressed the record button. He told me, now start narrating your tables. I don't even know if his intention was to make me feel bad or humiliate me. Maybe it didn't even occur to him how I was feeling, but I felt very bad and very intensely humiliated, and I was like kind of getting tears in my eyes. And with great shame, I started narrating the tables into the tape, and I felt like it was a very soul crushing. I felt very crushed with that. I kind of felt a little heartbroken that my dad was kind of making me do that. So I remember that as something that made me feel very ashamed, the experience of where my dad recorded me narrating the tables. I don't know what actually his intention was. He probably thought that I would listen to it and remember the tables. But at that time, it was a very, very intensely humiliating experience. So now these things came later, but there was something else I had mentioned at the end of my previous video, episode 13. And that was that my mom had an unplanned pregnancy. So this unplanned pregnancy, now they had to figure out what to do. So I don't know whether they wanted to, not keep the baby. Did they go to the hospital for that? I'm not like very sure. But then ultimately they decided to keep the baby. And I think probably they went for a checkup. There was a mission hospital in that area. So wherever there are tribals, you have these white missionaries, are probably British. So they had a very nice hospital. And I remember all mom speaking very highly of those sisters, those nuns who were running that mission hospital. And apparently they were very good. So mom said she had some allergy once, and when she went there, she took, like, they gave her one pill, and after that, just the one pill, for decades she did not have allergy again. But she didn't know the name of the pill or whatever. So then that mission hospital was a nice, good, very professionally run, very nice place over there. So now, as this unplanned pregnancy was progressing, they had to figure out how to cope, because they had just started this business. Dad had gone into business with this guy called Nair also, and they just had to figure out what to do. Then my mom figured out who should I reach out to. If the whole family was in Punjab and this was Maharashtra, so I think my one of my older cousins, who is just 10 years younger than my mom, her husband was a Jawan in the Navy, and they were posted probably somewhere near, probably in Mumbai, Kolaba, Navy Nagar, probably, I'm just guessing. But I do know that mom and dad went to request Sukh to come and assist with the birth when the due date was quite near. Now I don't know, her husband was on his own ego trip, and he said, probably he told, these are the stories I have heard later. Obviously, as a little 3-year-old, I have no memory of this. So Moni was born. My little sister was born probably when I was 3.5 years old. So apparently her husband was very strict about saying that you have to be back within 3 days. Like, he was very offended that my mom and dad wanted to take his wife away. Whereas my mom and dad have always been very dedicated to these people, and always, been in touch, helped them, and done all kinds of things for them. Anyway, that came later. And then they said okay. And in fact, even when my cousin joined, Sukh came with my mom for for help with the delivery. My mom was worried and stressed about this woman and her husband. Like, oh my God, if you don't go back within 3 days, how will, what will happen with your husband? And that's very weird, because if someone's calling, if someone needs help with the birthing, you don't just then leave them with a newborn, right? You would, I think, what you would do is you could say to the person that yes, you can spend 15 days with your Masi, you can spend 20 days with your Masi. So Sukh is one of those kids who my mom kind of brought up, because her older sister would keep landing up at my mom's house with all the kids, at my Nanaji's house. Like I told about the oldest sister, she would just come with all her kids and kind of plonk herself over there, and she used to spend months and months over there while her husband was posted somewhere on duty. And she was giving some amount of money to my Nanaji, but which was not really enough to cover the expenses. So even though my mom is only 10 years older than Sukh, she related to her like she saw her born, she was bringing her up, she was there changing her nappies. And after all of that, then this was how Sukh's husband was behaving. So obviously you can't predict the date of the birth, especially in a rural setting. The doctors also give you an approximate date. So apparently 3 days passed, and then the baby was still not born. But mom was so worried about Sukh and how her husband would treat her, because she, sometimes how Indian husbands can be. So then by day 4, Sukh was like, no, Masi, of course not. I will not leave you like this. I will wait till the birth. But then my mom was so worried, she insisted that, we drop you back, that you should go back to your husband. So apparently the story goes, what I have heard from the adults is that when they took Sukh back to her house, dropped her back to the husband's house, he opened the door, but because it was not day 3, but it was day 4, he did not even see that, the woman is still, the Masi is still pregnant, the birth has not even happened. He was so furious and fuming that he had told his wife to come back on day 3, but it was day 4. He opened the door and first he gave her a tight slap. That was how he treated her. And I'm wondering, why did she even enter the house after that? She should just turn around and not look at such a person again. But then apparently she didn't enter. That's what I'm guessing. She did continue to live with that person. And he was not a nice man. We could come back to that later. So that happened. So my mom gave birth without any family members around her to assist, and they were managing the farm, the cows, and all of that. And my sister Molly was born, and she was the cutest little baby you would see. She had these golden curls and she was a very fair baby. At that time in the 70s, we didn't have to be politically correct and, think everyone was beautiful, and no matter what your features, what your color. At the time, Indians found light skin very fascinating, and they did think that lighter children kind of stood out in a crowd of darker skinned or browner, more brown people. So she did look like a very, very beautiful baby to me also. So I also had golden curls that grew out into, since we had untrimmed hair, when it grew out, the hair was a little more brown at the top and the golden curls went down. And then as more hair grew out in the later years, the hair at the top were more dark. But as long as my hair were untrimmed, those little golden ringlets were always there at the right at the bottom of my hair. Like, our hair was very long. It was like our bum level. So yes, we had that untrimmed hair. In fact, later when I was in school, some of my classmates would, hold my braid, the end of my braid, and hold it up against the top of my head and say, how does this hair belong to the same person? Like, your lower hair is so golden and kind of then brownish, and then the top of your head is black hair. So how is this the hair of the same person? But that's simply because we never ever trimmed or removed our hair. And then that the baby, whatever the baby hair was also still with us, kind of. So yeah, that was about the hair. So baby Molly was very beautiful, very, very lovely, absolutely delightful baby. But then mom was managing at the time with the baby, and she was still working very hard at the farm. And then mom would be so busy, she didn't even probably look into the mirror much or whatever, but she developed those deficiency scars on her cheek. And that's because even though they were running a poultry and dairy business, in the sense eggs and milk, mom herself wouldn't drink milk. So she had lost a lot of weight, she had become very thin, but she got these deficiency scars on her cheeks. And, I remember she would just be working so hard, going early in the morning into the gotha. The cow shed was called the gotha. And I think she would give instructions to Ruby, our older sister, to look after us and manage our breakfast. Like mom would prepare the breakfast, fill the glasses with boiled milk, like boiled and cooled milk, and mix sugar in it and place those in front of us and then go to work in the cow shed. Mom was very systematic and organized. So I do remember that we used to be having breakfast in that kitchen, that one kitchen which we shared with Dada would also cook in it, that kitchen which we had made, where we had made the cement walls. Like I used to water them. So that kitchen, we would sit in that, and every single morning, baby Molly would spill her glass of milk. Obviously not when she was very, very small, when she would be sitting, old enough to sit and drink milk. That's when she would, every single morning, and then we'd be like, again baby Molly spilled her milk, again baby Molly spilled her milk. And that would be very frustrating. Like imagine mom never drinking milk because she was trying to establish the business and all of that, and then Molly would just spill a glass full of milk every day. But then she had to leave us in Ruby's care because mom was so busy with all the work of the cow shed and the farm and all of that. And I remember once, I will talk in the next video about how sometimes adults, especially in my time when I was growing up, they were so casual about violence towards children, like, beating a child, hitting a child. And this was all across the world. It was not just in India. There is the phrase, right? Spare the rod, spoil the child. So violence towards children was seen so casually at the time. But I will talk more about that in the next video. Until then, dear viewers, this is my story, every word true. And I will see you in my next video. Please like my video and please subscribe to my channel. I hope you come back and continue listening to my story. Okay, bye dear viewers. Take care. Bye.